Welcome to our fun little study group for PP 5361 Theory and Management of Public Service Organizations. These are the readings from the required text, Managing Human Behavior in Public and Nonprofit Organizations, Chapter 12.
It sounds a little formal when you say it like that with the course number and everything, but honestly, this chapter is probably one of the most relatable things we've covered so far.
Oh, absolutely. Because today we are doing a deep dive into the absolute chaos, and I mean that in the most loving way possible, of organizational culture and change.
It is the elephant in the room for every office, every nonprofit, and every government agency. You can have the best policy on paper, you can have the smartest people in the room, but if the culture eats your strategy for breakfast, you're done.
That is the classic line, isn't it? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. And what I love is how the text opens with this perfect contradiction. It puts two management aphorisms right next to each other, literally side by side. The first one says, change is bad.
And the second one, right underneath it, says, change is good.
It feels like a schizophrenia diagnosis for the entire field of public administration.
Right. It's like, make up your mind. But that really sets the stage for the tension we're going to explore today.
It does, because on one hand, you have the reality that change is the only constant. We have technology moving at, light speed, globalization, shifting citizen expectations. If you aren't changing, you're dying. That's the change is good part. It's survival.
Exactly. If a government agency is still operating like it's 1985, it's just not serving the public. So change is a moral imperative in a way.
But on the other hand, change is exhausting. And it's risky.
It is. And the statistics back that up. The text cites studies showing that over 70% of change efforts actually fail.
That number always stops me in my tracks. 70%.
It's staggering.
Think about that in any other context. If a surgeon failed 70% of the time, they'd be in jail. If a pirate landed the plane 30% of the time, nobody would ever fly.
Right.
But in management, a 70% failure rate is just...
Tuesday? It's accepted as the cost of doing business, which is wild. And our mission for this deep dive is to unpack why. Why is that number so high? We aren't just going to list definitions today.
No. We're going to look at the psychological toll change takes on people, why we dig our heels in.
And we're going to look at the specific toolkits managers use, which range from very rigid statistical charts all the way to, and you're going to love this, jazz music.
I saw that. I am so ready to talk about the jazz music.
And finally, we'll look at some real-world case studies, cities and counties that were, frankly, disasters, and somehow managed to turn it all around.
It's a full roadmap.
A whole roadmap.
So let's start with the people, the psychology of it, because I think we've all been that employee where the boss announces a new strategic direction at a mandatory 9 a.m. meeting and everyone just rolls their eyes.
Yep.
Why do we resist? Is it just stubbornness? Is it just people being lazy?
It's so easy to write it off as laziness or, obstinacy, but it's actually much deeper than that. The text explains that psychologically, change is experienced as loss.
Loss? Like grief? That feels a bit dramatic for a software update.
In a way, yes. Think about it. It's not just about learning a new software or a new filing procedure. It's about losing the security of the known. People develop standard ways of coping with their environment. That routine gives them a sense of safety and this is crucial, a sense of competence.
Competence. Okay, that's the key, isn't it?
When you change the rules, you are essentially telling a veteran employee the skills that made you successful yesterday might not make you successful tomorrow. You're stripping away their security blanket.
That makes total sense. It's the fear of sudden incompetence. It's like, I know how to navigate this bureaucracy today. I know who to call. I know which forms to skip. If you change the org chart, I might look like an idiot tomorrow.
Precisely. It's an identity crisis. If my identity is the guy who knows how the system works, and you change the system, who am I?
And that's when the resistance kicks in.
That's when it kicks in. And you see these mechanisms. The text specifically mentions hall talk.
Oh, the hall talk, the meeting after the meeting.
The rumors, the whispers by the water cooler. When people feel their productivity or security is threatened, they don't usually stand up in the conference room and say, I am afraid. That makes you look weak.
Right. You can't say, I'm scared I won't be able to learn the new database.
No. So they go into the hallway and say, this new plan is stupid. It's never going to work. Management doesn't know what they're doing.
It's a defense mechanism. It's safer to attack the plan than to admit your own vulnerability.
Exactly. And that informal resistance can tank productivity faster than any budget cut. It creates a shadow culture that opposes the official one. It's like an immune response. The organization is trying to reject the foreign body of change.
So if everyone hates it and it feels like loss, and the organization tries to kill it like a virus, why do we even do it? What are the drivers here that force this trauma onto everyone?
Well, the text breaks it down pretty neatly into external and internal drivers.
Okay.
Externally, you're looking at things like globalization, new laws, economic shifts, the forces you can't control.
The media coming at the dinosaur?
Right. Or maybe donor intent if you're a nonprofit.
Yeah.
If a major donor says, we're only funding climate resilience now, and you're a housing charity, you figure out how to do green housing, or you go broke, those are external shocks.
And internally, what's pushing from the inside?
Internal drivers are things like a shift in mission, new personnel, or administrative structures. Maybe you have a new director who wants to leave their mark. And this leads us to a really important distinction the text makes between incremental change and discontinuous change.
Okay, let's unpack that. Incremental sounds like baby steps.
Exactly.
Okay.
Incremental change is fine-tuning. It's building on the existing framework. We're going to make this process 10% faster. We're going to tweak the reporting structure. It's fixing specific problems within the current system.
It's evolution.
It's evolution. It's like remodeling the kitchen. You're still living in the same house.
Okay.
But discontinuous change, that is a shock to the system. It's a fundamental break from the past. It's revolution. It's bulldozing the house and building a skyscraper. The text gives this incredible example of the March of Dimes.
Yes. I loved this example because it shows how an organization can literally change its DNA.
It's a perfect case.
Yeah.
So let's look at the history. The March of Dimes was originally created to eradicate polio. That was the mission. That was the why.
Right. Simple. Clear.
They mobilized millions of people, raised millions of dollars. Well, eventually, the Salk vaccine is created, and polio is largely eradicated in the U.S. Mission accomplished, right?
In theory, yes. If you solve the problem you were built to solve, you should dissolve. You throw a party and go home.
But organizations want to survive. They are living organisms. They have staff. They have infrastructure. They have momentum.
Right. They don't just want to disappear.
So they underwent discontinuous change. They completely switched gears to a new mission, preventing birth defects. That isn't just an adjustment. That is a complete reconstruction of identity, strategy, and operations.
That's fascinating. It's like a restaurant deciding to become a car dealership. It's a total restart.
And think about the personnel implications. The experts you needed to fight polio might not be the same experts you need for genetic birth defects.
Oh, wow. I hadn't thought of that. You're basically starting from scratch.
So discontinuous change is where that resistance we talked about really flares up. It requires unlearning the past. If you spent 20 years becoming an expert on polio, and suddenly the mission is both defects, you are back to square one. That loss is profound.
Now, there's another concept here about the rhythm of change, because it's not just about the size of the change, but the speed, right? The pace of it.
This comes from Huey and Mintzberg.
Yeah.
They talk about a dynamic rhythm. You have dramatic change, which is usually led by a crisis. We have no money. Cut the budget now. That's fast, painful, and usually comes from the top.
That's the heart attack approach. Clear. Zap.
Then you have systematic change, which is slower. This is usually led by staff or consultants, planned. We are rolling out a new IT system over 18 months. It's methodical.
And the third type of rhythm.
Organic change. This bubbles up from the ranks. It's messy, it's uncoordinated, but it's often where the real innovation happens because it's coming from the people doing the work.
Like the frontline worker realizing, hey, if I do this form in reverse, it saves 10 minutes.
Exactly. And the trick for a manager is to conduct that orchestra, right? To keep those rhythms from becoming just noise.
You can't just have chaos.
No. If you only have crisis-led change, you burn everyone out. You get change fatigue. If you only have systematic change, you might move too slow and miss the market. You need a symbiosis. You need the stability of the systematic with the agility of the organic.
Okay, so we know change is hard, we know why it happens, and we know it comes in different flavors. Let's get into the how, the theories. Because apparently we can explain organizational change using football.
We can. This brings us to Kurt Lewin's field theory. It's one of the classic models dating back to the mid-20th century. Lewin viewed the status quo not as a stillness, but as a dynamic deadlock.
A deadlock between
driving forces and restraining forces. Imagine a football field. The ball is the current state of the organization. It looks like it's sitting still on the 50-yard line.
Okay, I'm with you.
But actually, there's an offensive team pushing it one way.
The driving forces for change.
Right. and a defensive team pushing back.
The restraining forces.
Exactly. So the ball isn't resting. It's under immense pressure from both sides. It's just not moving because the pressure is equal.
It's held in place by equal and opposite tension.
Precisely. Now, if you want the ball to move, if you want change, most inexperienced managers think, I need to push harder. They add more driving force, more incentives, more threats, more speeches from the CEO.
But according to Lewin, that's a mistake.
It can be a huge mistake. Lewin argued that simply adding more driving force often just increases the tension. The defense pushes back harder. The resistance grows. The hull talk gets louder.
So what's the alternative? You can't just leave the ball there.
Sometimes the smarter move is to lower the restraining forces. Address the fears, remove the barriers, lower the defense. Instead of pushing harder, you take away the things that are pushing back.
That's so counterintuitive. Instead of yelling, go faster, you ask, what's stopping you?
Precisely. And once you decide to move that ball, Lewin had a famous three-step process. Simple, but profound. Step 1, unfreezing.
Unfreezing. This goes back to the ice metaphor. You have a block of ice.
Right. You have to shake loose the equilibrium. You have to get people to admit that the current way is flawed. You can't build a new shape if the ice is still frozen solid in the old shape. You have to melt it down.
That sounds painful. That sounds like creating a crisis on purpose.
It usually is. That's the loss phase we talked about. You have to make the status quo feel more dangerous than the unknown. You have to make people feel that staying on the couch is actually worse than going to the gym.
Right. If we don't change, we go out of business or our funding gets cut.
Exactly. Step 2 is changing, implementing the new behavior. And step 3 is refreezing.
Refreezing. So locking it back in so it doesn't melt again.
Right. Institutionalizing the change so it becomes the new normal. If you don't refreeze, the organization will just slide back to the old way the minute you stop pushing.
That makes a lot of sense. It reminds me of trying to start a gym habit. You have to unfreeze your routine of sitting on the couch. Maybe you see a bad photo of yourself and get motivated.
Yeah.
You do the actual workouts, which suck at first. And then eventually going to the gym becomes the new frozen state. It becomes habit. You feel weird if you don't go.
Perfect analogy. If you skip the refreezing, you're just a person who went to the gym for 2 weeks in January and then quit.
Ouch. Too real. I feel seen. But let's pivot to another theory that deals with how organizations learn. Because if change is learning, then some organizations are definitely slow learners. The text discusses Chris Argyris and Donald Schoen, and they distinguish between single-loop and double-loop learning.
This is crucial for anyone in public service, and the thermostat analogy they use is the best way to visualize it.
Okay, walk us through the thermostat.
All right. Imagine a thermostat set to 68 degrees. That's the norm. If the room drops to 65, the thermostat detects the error and turns on the heat.
Simple enough.
It solves the immediate problem based on set rules. That is single-loop learning. Problem detected, apply standard fix.
So in a government agency, that would be budget shortfall detected, cut travel expenses.
Exactly. Citizen complaint received, send form letter B. It's, we have a problem, fix it using the manual. It's efficient, but it's limited.
But double-loop learning, that's different.
Double-loop learning is if the thermostat could ask, wait, why am I set to 68 degrees? Is 58 even the right temperature? Maybe we should be opening a window instead. Maybe the furnace is breaking. Maybe the house is on fire.
It questions the underlying assumptions.
It questions the governing variables. Most organizations are stuck in single loop. They see a symptom and treat it. Double loop requires stepping back and asking, is our business model even viable anymore? Is our mission still relevant? Are we solving the wrong problem?
So single loop is, are we doing things right? And double loop is, are we doing the right things?
Boom. Exactly. And doing double loop learning is terrifying for managers because it opens the door to fundamental questioning of their authority and strategy. It invites chaos.
But it's where the real transformation happens.
It's the only way. And that ties into Peter Senge's fifth discipline, right? Systems thinking.
Right.
Senge argues you can't just look at isolated parts. You have to see the interconnectedness of the whole. If you pull a lever in accounting, what happens in customer service? If you cut the budget for park maintenance, does crime go up 6 months later?
It's about seeing those invisible webs.
It is. Which brings us to the biggest invisible web that holds everything together.
Culture.
The mysterious force.
The great mystery.
The text defines culture not just as vibes, though I know we love that word, but as deep-seated norms, values, and assumptions. And it uses Edgar Schein's model to break this down. Schein's 3 levels. This is crucial for anyone trying to diagnose a workplace. If you walk into a new job, Stop looking at the handbook and start looking for these three things.
Okay, level 1, what am I looking for?
Level 1 is artifacts. These are the visible things. The office layout, the dress code, the jargon people use. Do they have cubicles or an open plan? Do they wear ties or hoodies? Is the door to the boss's office open or closed?
So if I walk in and everyone is wearing hoodies and playing ping pong, that's an artifact. And I might think, wow, cool, relaxed culture.
Correct. But don't be fooled. That's just the surface. You can have a ping pong table and a toxic environment. That leads to level 2. Espoused values.
Okay.
This is what they say they believe. The mission statement on the wall that says, we value work-life balance. The glossy brochure stuff.
Right. Our people are our greatest asset.
Exactly. But then you get to level 3, the truth. Basic underlying assumptions.
And these are invisible.
These are the unconscious, taken-for-granted beliefs. So the sign says, work-life balance. But if the underlying assumption is, if you leave before 7 p.m., you aren't dedicated, that is the real culture.
And the text points out that conflict often happens here between the espoused theory, what we say, and the theory in use, what we do.
Walking the walk versus talking the talk. If those two don't match, you have a cynical workforce. You have people rolling their eyes at the mission statement.
There was a fantastic case study about this clash, the Washington State ferry system. This felt like a movie script about a culture war.
It really does. It captures this tension perfectly. So let's set the scene. You have the ferry system in Washington. It started as a private, family-owned business, the Blackball Line.
And what was that culture like? What were the artifacts and assumptions?
It was like a family. Lots of joking, socializing. People knew each other's kids. It was a maritime culture, a bit rough around the edges, maybe a bit informal, but high trust. The captain was the captain, and everyone looked out for each other.
So relationships were the currency.
Exactly. But then the state takes it over. It gets assigned to the Department of Transportation, and the DOT has a bureaucratic culture. This is the clash of the titans.
Enter the suit.
Enter the spreadsheets, the performance monitoring systems, the automated technical standards. The DOT is saying, we need efficiency, accountability, and standardization. We need to account for every gallon of fuel.
And the ferry workers are saying, what?
The ferry workers are saying, we need trust, community, and autonomy. We know how to run these boats. Stop measuring us.
And it wasn't just that they disagreed, it's that the culture acted as a massive restraining force. You can't just install a new accounting system if the basic underlying assumption of the staff is we don't operate by numbers, we operate by relationships.
Precisely. The DOT tried to impose structural, change new rules, new bosses, but they ignored the cultural level. The ferry workers saw the new rules not as improvements, but as an attack on their identity.
They felt that loss we talked about at the very beginning.
They did. It illustrates that culture isn't just fluffy stuff. It's the bedrock that can break your drill if you aren't careful.
That is a great metaphor. And speaking of drills, let's look at the toolkit. We have managers who need to create change. What tools do they actually have? The text lays out quite a few, starting with the most obvious, structural.
The top-down approach. Reorganization.
Right. This is the classic, let's move the boxes on the organizational chart.
I feel like every new CEO does this within the first 90 days. It's like a rite of passage. Marketing now reports to sales. IT is now under operations.
They do. It's tangible. You can show it to the board. You can send out a memo. But the text notes the limitations. You can move boxes, but that doesn't necessarily change behavior.
Right. Just because I sit next to Dave now doesn't mean I'm going to work better with Dave. It's like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It looks different, but the ship is steering the same way.
If the culture remains don't share information, moving the boxes won't make people share information.
Exactly. So to get deeper, you need organization development, or OD.
OD. This sounds serious.
It is interesting because it's heavily influenced by behavioral science. It focuses on the human side processes, communication, feelings. It emerged in the mid-20th century as a reaction against the cog in the machine mentality.
And this is where we get the T groups.
Sensitivity training. In the 60s and 70s, this was huge. Putting people in a room, unstructured, to talk about their feelings and interactions.
That sounds incredibly awkward. I'm sweating just thinking about it.
It can be. But the goal is process consultation. It's not a consultant coming in and saying, do X. It's a consultant helping the client solve their own problem by understanding how they interact. It's holding up a mirror.
So, do you realize that every time Susan speaks, you interrupt her? How does that affect the team?
Exactly that. It's therapy for the organization.
And like therapy, it requires vulnerability. It's messy, but it gets to those underlying assumptions.
It can. Then we have a tool that sounds much nicer, but I played devil's advocate when reading it. Appreciative inquiry, or AI.
The optimist's approach.
It is.
To me, this initially sounded like toxic positivity. Let's just ignore the problems and be happy. But the text actually frames it as a strategic tool.
It is strategic. Traditional management is often about gap analysis, finding what's broken and fixing it. The deficit model, it's focusing on the pothole.
Right.
AI flips that. It lives for the positive core. What are we doing right?
So instead of why do we suck at customer service, it's when was the time we delighted a customer and how do we replicate that?
Exactly. It follows a 4D cycle. Discovery, finding the best of what is. Dream, imagining what could be. Design, how to get there. And destiny, sustaining it.
And the theory is that it generates positive energy.
The theory is about energy. If you focus on problems, you get exhausted and defensive. If you focus on strengths, you get energized and creative. It unfreezes people by making them feel capable rather than guilty.
Okay, I can buy that. It's leveraging momentum rather than fighting friction. But then for the people who love charts and hate feelings, we have the opposite end of the spectrum, Six Sigma and Lean.
The perfectionist's approach. This comes from manufacturing. Six Sigma is about statistical analysis to reduce defects.
And the standard is insane. It's some crazy number.
It's 3.4 defects per million opportunities. That is 99.99997% perfection.
The text mentions a state office of cash and debt management using this, which honestly, if you're handling my money, I want you to be 99.9997% perfect.
Right.
I don't want appreciative inquiry handling my bank deposit. I want Six Sigma.
That's a great point. Different tools for different problems. You don't use Six Sigma for a morale problem, and you don't use appreciative inquiry for a nuclear safety protocol.
Right. Let's dream about how the nuclear reactor could work is probably bad policy.
Very bad policy. And with that, you also have Lean, which is the Toyota model eliminating waste. You have people running around called black belts and green belts. It's very rigorous, very hierarchical in its certification. It brings a discipline that public organizations often lack.
And then we have the wild card. The one that made me double check, I was still reading a public administration textbook.
Oh, yeah.
Change through the arts.
Yes. This is where it gets really interesting. And I think this is where modern management is heading, realizing that humans are not machines.
We're talking about jazz.
Jazz Impact. This was a program where they brought a jazz ensemble to IBM executives.
To play background music while they ate shrimp?
No, to teach. Think about jazz. It's collaborative, but it's ambiguous. There's a structure, the chord progression, but huge amounts of improvisation. It's about liminal spaces.
Liminal space. That sounds spooky.
It's that threshold between the known and the unknown, the moment where you aren't sure what happens next. In jazz, you have to listen to your team intensely and react in the moment.
So if the drummer shifts the beat,
you have to shift with them. They use the music to show executives how to lead when there is no sheet music, when the market is chaotic.
That is so cool. It's teaching adaptability through ear training. It's visceral. You feel it.
Exactly. You feel the collaboration rather than just putting it on a slide.
And there was a more serious example too, right? The Red Cross after Hurricane Katrina.
This was powerful. The text describes how the Southeast Louisiana chapter of the Red Cross was decimated. These workers had lost their own homes. They were traumatized, but they were trying to help others. They were burnt out beyond belief.
And spreadsheets weren't going to fix that. A reorganization wasn't going to fix that.
No, they were frozen by trauma. So they brought in a group called Creative Leaps International. They used music, poetry, performance, a concert of ideas.
That sounds risky. I can imagine some tired relief worker thinking, I need water, not poetry.
We would think. But it wasn't about strategy. It was about emotional unfreezing. It allowed them to cry, to feel, and to recover. It healed the people so the organization could function. It accessed a part of the brain that gap analysis can't touch.
It really shows that sometimes the soft stuff is actually the hardest and most necessary work.
Absolutely. You can't Six Sigma your way out of trauma. You have to address the human spirit.
So we've got the tools. Now let's look at where this hits the road, the public sector. Because the text makes a point that you can't just run a government like a business, despite what every politician says during an election campaign.
I'm going to run this city like a business. It's the favorite slogan. But enter Jim Collins. He wrote Good to Great, which is the business Bible. But then he wrote a monograph for the social sector.
And he basically says, hold on a minute.
He does. He points out that business metrics, specifically profit, don't apply.
Right. If the DMV makes a huge profit, that's probably bad news for the citizens. It means they're overcharging us.
Exactly. In business, money is both an input, resource, and an output, profit. In government, money is only an input, The output is impact. Public organizations must define greatness by how effectively they deliver on their mission.
He talks about the hedgehog concept.
Yes, it's based on the fable of the fox and the hedgehog. The fox knows many things, but the hedgehog knows one big thing. For an organization, your hedgehog concept is the intersection of three circles.
Okay, what are they?
What are you deeply passionate about? What can you be the best in the world at? And what drives your resource engine?
So you have to find that sweet spot. You can't just chase every opportunity.
Right. And he talks about level 5 leadership.
This is the leader who isn't a celebrity, not the flashy CEO.
Yes. Personal humility combined with professional will. In the public sector, this is crucial because you often have diffuse power structures. You can't just fire everyone like a CEO might. You have to lead people who have the freedom not to follow you.
You need buy-in.
You need legislative buy-in, union buy-in, public buy-in. It requires a servant leader mentality.
We have two major case studies that illustrate this public sector change. These are the success stories. First, let's go to Fremont, California. Jan Perkins.
This is a classic turnaround story. Fremont was in trouble. Economic difficulty, citizens had lost confidence. They saw the government as a vending machine.
I love this metaphor. I want to linger on this. Government as a vending machine.
It's the default view for many people. You put taxes in.
The quarters.
You press the button.
Vote or call.
And you get services out. Permits, paved roads.
And if this service doesn't come out?
You kick the machine. You get angry. It's transactional relationship. It's passive. The citizen is just a consumer.
And Perkins wanted to shift that metaphor to a barn raising.
Collaborative.
Yeah.
Community effort. We build the barn together.
That changes the citizen from a customer to a partner.
Exactly. It changes the responsibility. And internally, she used a slogan, just do it.
Which is trademarked, but we'll let it slide because it worked.
It was about empowerment. The example given is a broken streetlight. In the old culture, the bureaucratic culture, a planning department employee walks by a broken streetlight and says, not my department, that's maintenance. If I touch it, I might get in trouble for stepping on toes.
The classic bureaucratic shuffle, not my job, I don't have the form.
In the new culture, just do it meant that employee owns the problem until it's resolved. They call maintenance, they check back. They are responsible for the city, not just their desk.
It's shifting from silos to service.
It is. And that's a massive cultural shift. It requires trust that you won't get reprimanded for stepping out of your lane.
You have to remove the fear of punishment for initiative.
Correct.
And then we have Maricopa County, Arizona. This one sounded like a forensic investigation.
It did. The county was in a massive financial hole. We're talking $100 million. But nobody knew the full extent because of shadow systems.
Shadow systems. It sounds nefarious, like something from a spy novel. The shadow books.
It kind of is. Departments were keeping their own secret accounting books. Maybe because they didn't trust the central system, or they wanted to hide things, or they just thought their way was better. I know how much money I have. I don't need to tell the central office.
Chaos.
Total chaos. You can't manage a budget if you don't know where the money is.
Right.
So you have the county administrator, David R. Smith, come in.
Yep.
He's facing a crisis. What does he do?
He didn't just ask nicely.
No, he centralized the data. He basically said, I refuse to look at your shadow books. We're making decisions based on the central system. If it's not in the central system, it doesn't exist.
That is a bold move. He forced everyone into the light.
Managing for results. If you wanted funding, you had to use the system. It forced accountability. You couldn't hide the deficit anymore.
And the outcome was dramatic.
They went from being a poster child for bad government to one of the best-run counties in the country. They won awards.
It shows the power of data, but only if that data is transparent and shared. It was a structural change, centralizing the database, that forced a cultural change transparency.
Correct. It was a structural and cultural change driven by financial necessity.
Before we wrap up, we have to touch on the dark side, the ethics of change. Because if we are using psychology to unfreeze people, and we are using social pressure to change norms, isn't that manipulative?
It's the million-dollar question. If you are good at this, you are tinkering with people's identities. The text distinguishes between influence, manipulation, and coercion.
What's the line? Where does it cross?
Coercion is force. Do this, or you lose your job. Do this, or we cut your funding. It's a threat to well-being. It works, but it breeds resentment. It's short-term compliance, not long-term change.
Okay, that's clear. And manipulation.
Manipulation is deception. It's tricking someone into doing what you want, or robbing them of autonomy, making them think it was their idea when it wasn't. It's managing the perceptions rather than their reality. It's dishonest.
And the ethical duty for a public administrator.
You have to respect employee autonomy. You are serving the public interest, not just your own ego. If you dehumanize your staff in the name of efficiency, you are failing ethically.
So influence is fine.
Influence is fine. That's persuasion based on reason and shared values. But if you cross into manipulation, you erode the very trust you need to sustain the change.
So we've covered a lot, from the psychology of loss to the jazz of leadership, from the thermostat to the shadow books. What's the big takeaway for you?
For me, it's that change is not a linear path. It's a swamp. It requires navigating human emotion, deep-seated culture, and politics. You need the hard tools like Six Sigma to fix the process, but you desperately need the soft skills, the listening, the double-loop learning, the empathy to fix the people.
You need to be able to read the room, not just the spreadsheet.
That's it, exactly. And sometimes you need a little jazz.
I want to leave our listeners with one final thought from the source material that really stuck with me. In the section on leadership, there's an interview where a CEO says he learned more from his bad bosses than his good ones.
Oh, that's interesting. Usually we look for mentors.
He said the bad bosses were hyper-controlling. They tried to structure everything. They were single-loop thinkers. But good leaders gave freedom. And here's the provocation. Look at your own organization. Are the structures you have in place designed to control behavior, or are they designed to unleash it? Are you building a vending machine, or are you raising a barn?
That is a question worth asking.
Thanks for joining our study group today. Good luck with the reading.
See you next time.